we get one of the biggest trades we've seen in this generation in the NFL as Micah Parsons is no longer a Dallas Cowboy. He is now a Green Bay Packer. He is headed to Green Bay. You see the tweet there from Shefty. Parsons and the Packers already have reached agreement on a 4-year, $188 million contract at a hand in the trade. So you see how it all went down. A ton of money. But first and foremost, if you are a Cowboys fan right now, Frank, you are in shock.
Absolutely. But before I get to that, because you said the biggest trade of our generation, and I just tweeted this out, I think it's actually the biggest trade ever. And I'm going to tell you why. NFL history. You could say, oh, what about the Herschel Walker trade? That was all these players. And we're living in a different time where NFL is 24/7 now. Everybody's paying attention to the NFL constantly. Even the Khalil Mack trade, very similar. Khalil Mack, Defensive Player of the Year, probably on his way to Hall of Fame someday. This wasn't the Dallas Cowboys making this trade, though. The Dallas Cowboys trading a superstar at the peak of his powers for 2 first-round picks. It doesn't really compare to any other NFL trade as far as the reaction, as far as how much we're going to talk about it. The Herschel Walker trade happened. You read about it in a newspaper the next day. That's awesome. Great. A relic from the past. This is one we're literally, this blows the Luka Doncic trade out of the water because it's the NFL and it's the Cowboys. And this is the team we all talk about 24/7. I really, truly think, Fitz, this is the biggest trade in NFL history, just as far as the amount of attention it's going to get, the amount of eyes it's going to get, the amount of people talking about it is going to get. Like, this is just unprecedented, basically, for the Dallas Cowboys to make a move like this. Am I wrong? Am I crazy? Am I just living off the vapors of the high of hearing about this trade? Because it just seems massive to me in the moment.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time figuring out in the top of my head a bigger trade. And also, I'm having a really hard time trying to think of it. You're a great historian, Frank. When is the last time you can remember a team traded away their best player? And don't get it twisted, Micah Parsons is the best player on Dallas's roster, or was the best player on Dallas's roster. When's the last time a team traded away their best player and got immediately better? Like, because at the end of the day,
Right.
They get Kenny Clark, the defensive tackle, in return, and 2 first-round picks, a 26 and a 27, to which I say, who cares? Like, if you're a Cowboys fan, you were just sitting here a year ago and it was, we're all in. We're all in. You've watched your organization drag their feet to sign their quarterback and their wide receiver. You've watched all of this money go out, and we've just presumed all summer, I've presumed all summer now incorrectly, that they would simply get it done because that's what Jerry does. What Jerry has just done is he's made it tougher for the Cowboys to win a Super Bowl in the first year with Schottenheimer as a head coach. So now an organization that always seems to have some expectations whether it's warranted or not, and a man that always comes out and talks about Super Bowls has just made it more difficult for the very franchise he runs to win a Super Bowl. Like, I can't make this. I don't care about Jerry's money. I don't care about the future cap. I don't care about any of that. What just got tougher is the Cowboys' ability to actually compete in their own division.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you on this one. And, you know, I play fantasy leagues. You play in fantasy leagues. And if you get a 3-for-1 offer, just hit reject immediately. You know why? Because the one is always way better than the 3 pieces you're getting back. And look, the Cowboys didn't get nothing in this trade. This wasn't the Luka trade where you're like, okay, they sold for pennies on the dollar. No, the Cowboys got something back for sure. Kenny Clark is a good player. The 2 first-round picks, it's rare to see any player go for 2 first-round picks. But start to think about this. Kenny Clark last year at age 28 had 1 sack. He's been a good player, 3-time Pro Bowler, but he's 29. He's not making the impact Micah Parsons is, obviously. Those picks the Packers sent over, they might be number 32. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later in the show. But the Packers are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this season. They were without Micah Parsons. So look at the people drafted from, like, let's say 26 to 32. Are there some huge hits in there? Yeah, there are. But mostly it's just solid guys. Like, okay, wow, we found a really good starting linebacker there. It's not the Micah Parsons of the world. Heck, it fits. If you were to tell me both of these picks are top 10, right? I still would say, all right, that's cool. The chances of one of those guys being Micah Parsons, still pretty low. That's just the way it is. Micah Parsons is, we use the term a lot, generational. It's hard to replace him. And even when you go back to the Raiders trade with the Khalil Mack trade, they got a lot back. You look at what they really got, though, the picks. I think one of those picks was Josh Jacobs, a fine player, a good player. you would never in a million years trade Josh Jacobs or Khalil Mack straight up. Khalil Mack has been way more valuable through his career. And I think the same thing is going to happen here, where we're going to look 5 years down the road and we're going to say, yeah, they got 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. And it was never close to being equal value because Micah Parsons went on to the Hall of Fame. I think Micah Parsons going to Hall of Fame. I think he's going to Defensive Player of the Year some year. You're just not. Maybe, look, Mary, the Cowboys have drafted really, really well. I want to give Jerry credit for that. So maybe they turn these draft picks into gold and something that we look back and say, okay, yeah, it was worth trading Micah Parsons in his prime. I don't think so, Fitz. I just think you traded for 3 pieces where you're like, okay, they're fine, but they're not Micah Parsons.
The night before Khalil Mack was traded, I was on radio at ESPN at the time. And I went on radio and there were all these rumors going everywhere. And I said, look, there's a 0% chance the Raiders are trading Khalil Mack. Why? Because at that time, John Gruden, particularly not known for wanting young players, likes veteran players. And he was clearly the best player on their roster. I laughed about it. I woke up the next morning in my tiny apartment in Bristol at the time, and I looked at my phone, and I immediately said, what happened in my life that I have hundreds of texts from people? And it was just everybody I've ever worked with, everybody I've ever toured with, everybody I've ever done a show with, just outwardly laughing at me over and over and over again. Cowboys fans, I've lived your misery. Like, I want you to understand this because misery is the appropriate reaction. When you have one of the best players in the NFL, when you have a transcendent player and you simply decide to let him walk, even if you're a bad team, that's a hard pill to swallow. What do you do now when you are in the same division as the defending Super Bowl champions? Like, without Micah Parsons, I'm sorry, I am not putting the Cowboys anywhere near the same shelf of liquor. When we talk about like where they are,
right.
Top shelf, Philadelphia Eagles. The Cowboys are a heck of a lot closer to well today than they are to top shelf without Micah Parsons. This defense is not going to be as good without Micah Parsons. These aren't hot takes. You mentioned earlier, like he's the defensive player of the year candidate every single year he steps on the field. He and Reggie White are the only 2 players in NFL history to come out and get 12 sacks in each of their first 4 years for a reason. And when you let someone like that walk, what have you just done? You've told your entire organization you're not serious about winning. You've told your entire locker room that you care more about saving a little bit of cash than you do about actually getting things done the right way and helping your team win. You've told your new coach, yeah, it's going to be tougher from you. And you've told your entire fan base that you're acknowledging, you're accepting that this year, because we're talking about Kenny Clark this year, right? This year, fine. Those 2 first-round picks, they don't matter this year. So you're now telling Cowboys fans this year that your best case scenario is probably 3rd place in your own division. Like, that is not – it is time to change the conversation forever about how we view the Cowboys and their desperation to win, because we just learned today the Cowboys are actually not serious about winning football games right now.
It's a great point. I'm going to circle back to that, but I want to hit on this because I was very dismissive yesterday and even through today. People texting me, friends, whatever. We even talked about it real quick on Inside Coverage last night. Hey, the Packers, they got a shot to get him. John Kuhn, their former fullback, texted like, Micah Parsons, keep an eye on this. And it was like, whatever. Like, maybe yes, I doubt it. Because you know why, Fitz? Because it was inconceivable to me that Jerry Jones would trade Micah Parsons. I kept thinking like, all right, this is a big show, and we're going to get to the end of the show, and it's going to be Micah, just like Terry McLaurin a few days ago, smiling as he signs the contract. The Cowboys tweeted out, hey, everybody's happy. And I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea of Jerry Jones trading a 26-year-old Micah Parsons in his prime, practically no matter what he got back, unless it was this is an unprecedented offer in NFL history, which it really wasn't. It was a Khalil Mack offer. Like that's what it was. And so I have a bunch of buddies texted me back today like, boy, were you wrong? And I'm like, yeah, I was, because I never thought Jerry Jones would trade Micah because, as you said, it doesn't get him any closer to a Super Bowl that they've been chasing for almost 30 years now. It actually sets them back. And unless you just nail these first round picks, which you might, but like you said, you got to wait 2 years for one of these first round picks. Those first round picks aren't going to be that valuable. And now we got to take everything that Jerry Jones says kind of at a different face value. All in, famously a year and a half ago. You ain't all in if you're trading Micah Parsons. If you're letting your ego get involved, and I want to talk about that too, because I just wrote about that. If you're letting your ego get involved in this whole kerfuffle you had with Micah Parsons, you're not really serious about winning. You're not serious about putting your best football team out there. The Dallas Cowboys are simply not better without Micah Parsons. And anyway, I'll believe it when I see it. Let's put it that way. They are much further away from a Super Bowl than they were a few hours ago when they traded Micah Parsons. You just don't replace a Micah Parsons. You win Super Bowls with elite top shelf guys and you fill in around them. They had Dak, they had CD, and they had Micah. And if you want to get it done under the salary cap, they could have. Look, Jerry already basically said, I already agreed to a deal with them to make them the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So it wasn't like this was some salary cap thing where you're just like, oh, we can't make this work. This was just Jerry getting in his own way and making the Cowboys worse. And I don't know how he spins this. I don't know how he sells this to fans as a good thing. This is going to look Mavs games, right? For the rest of the season, everybody's chanting fire Nico Harrison. You can't fire Jerry Jones, but they're going to be chanting at a Cowboys games. I can't imagine a fan base is even close to being okay with this. I think there's going to be just kind of a revolt almost against Jerry Jones. I can't wait to see how he spins this.
I mean, let's talk about pride and ego, because how much of this is based on the fact that Jerry did think he had a deal. And according to some reports that came out today, that deal was around $40.5 million a year, right? So if you do the quick math, $40.5 million is roughly what, $164 million. And instead he gets 188. So yeah, that's $25 million difference. That's a big difference.
I don't think real quick, Fitz, that's how it ended up, but I don't think that's how it played out in the moment. I think, and I don't know, I'm just guessing here. Speculation is bad, as Siciliano talked about yesterday, but I'm going to do it anyway. My assumption is if Jerry just goes to the agent and is like, all right, we got $40.5 million a year, and David Mulligan, I can't pronounce his name. Parsons' agent, yeah, I always get it wrong, and I hate doing it. We'll do it for 42 a year because that's $1 million more than TJ Watt. Isn't that what you think would happen? Like, yeah, the Packers came over the top. Like, they went all in with this $47 million offer. Good for them. But that wasn't necessary. I don't think that was what Parsons was asking for in the moment. I think he would have been fine with 42, 43 million a year. Jerry could have got this deal done if he wanted, right?
But even if it took this offer, and I've got the numbers in front of me, $62 million in the first year of the deal, $120 million fully guaranteed, a total of $136 million guaranteed, all records for non-quarterbacks. Even if that's what it takes. This is where fans can easily say, yeah, but look at the total amount of money. I would ask everybody to consider the difference, the gap in spending, because as we've covered ad nauseum for how long, this deal could have been done with Micah a while ago. They chose not to do it. They chose to wait. They also chose to wait on CD, and they chose to wait on Dak. So as a result, they're overpaying a lot of people because they didn't get to the market first. It's like waiting too long to buy a house. So all of a sudden the market blows up in front of you, right? So all of these mistakes stack up. But then the other portion of it is even just looking at this deal as a whole. If you're telling me right now that the difference is $6-7 million a year, find the $7 million a year. Like just find it. Instead of looking at it and saying, oh my God, you can't pay somebody that much money. That's what we all hear. You hear $62 million, you're like, oh, you can't pay that. Okay. Well, what were they willing to spend and what was the true gap? Because if the true gap over the course of 4 years is about $24 million, quick math again, that's about $6 million a year. So you're willing right now in year one with Schottenheimer, with the defense that desperately needs your help, with the Jerry Jones that frankly is not getting any younger, waiting for a Super Bowl window, you're willing to let $6 million be the difference between, I think, being at least on the fringe of the playoffs and now being a team. Like, to me, this defense is nowhere near good enough to get the Cowboys to the playoffs. Nowhere near. So all of a sudden,
we saw them last year without Parsons. It was bad.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this was
for
not a good defense
bucks?
Without Micah Parsons. For $6 million. And Fitz, do you really think it's money with Jerry Jones here? Do you really think he was like,
no, it's pride. It's pride.
Mulligetta came in here and said, exactly. It's not like, I doubt this happened this way, but let's even envision it. Mulligetta comes in and says, no, we think we can get $47 million a year. Jerry's like, whoa, that's way too expensive for me. I don't think that's how this played out. Jerry's never been shy about spending money on his product. Like he makes a ton of money and he spends a lot of money. That's really never been his problem. I think this, and we have talked about this on Inside Coverage all month. Like, this has been a constant theme that it was so strange that Jerry Jones just decided, hey, I got this handshake deal done with Micah. He needs to honor this. We didn't have the agent in the room. Well, Jerry, that's not how deals work in the NFL. If a guy has an agent, you got to go through him. That's just how it goes. Like, he knows better than that. I talked about this yesterday. Why he got so stuck on this point is beyond me, but it became this weird personal thing where he's saying, I don't even know the agent's name. Come on, David Mulligetta is one of the biggest time agents in sports. Like that's ridiculous. You're just making things adversarial for no reason at all. And then he shares, as we talked about it when we were, me, Charles, and Ben Fox were in Vegas, the story broke that, Jerry goes on Michael Irvin's podcast and says, hey, we sent the details to the agent, and the agent told us to stick it up our behind. That, like, why even share that, for one? And that's what the agent should say, Jerry. Like, that better than that. But he's telling this story almost with glee. Like, he's got a smile on his face when he's telling this story. Like, I'm going to get you. It just became this really strange personal battle between the agent. I don't even think it's Mike. I think it's the agent and Jerry. Jerry refusing to acknowledge the agent's existence, taking shots at the agent. This is just how business is done. I don't know. Like Jerry Jones, who, look, his ego has brought him to great heights. He is the most valuable franchise in sports in the entire world. And Jerry's ego is a big part of the reason why. He's a phenomenal businessman. I would never take that away from him. But in this particular instance, his ego is why Micah Parsons is not on this team anymore. He could have gotten a deal done if he wanted to. The salary cap is not an issue. Cash is certainly not an issue for the Dallas Cowboys. This is Jerry Jones getting in a peeing match with the agent when you didn't have to. Just do a deal like every other NFL team would have done a deal here. It would have gotten done. The reason Micah Parsons is not a Dallas Cowboy anymore, and he won't be for the rest of his great, what I think is going to be a Hall of Fame career, is because Jerry Jones' ego got in the way here. I'm convinced of that, and you won't convince me otherwise.
It took a long time after the passing of Al Davis. It has taken a long time for people to remember what Al did early in his career in the NFL that made him such a huge part of NFL legacy, right? Like, in so many ways, at the end of his life, he was really defined by many of the mistakes. And that was the largest narrative that was loudly spoken when Al Davis passed. It took a minute, and the Raiders have never been the same, right? I look at Jerry, and I'm left to wonder, honestly, if Micah Parsons goes to the Packers this year, wins a Super Bowl, becomes the defensive player of the year, starts a run that he's fully capable of at 26 years old in the next 6 years of being one of, if not the most dominant players on the defensive side of the ball in the entire NFL, while the Packers year in and year out reap the rewards, and the Cowboys are stuck, as they have been for 30 plus years, in this sea of suck. If that's what happens here, I think it is fair to start to question how much we will look at the moves that Jerry made at the end of his time with the Cowboys and how that impacts a legacy. We talk about it all the time for athletes, so let's at least acknowledge it for owners too. Sometimes what you do at the end of your legacy does and should impact the way we have conversations about what you've meant to the league overall. And Jerry certainly has meant more to monetization to the NFL than anybody in history. And it's fair to talk about his branding and his marketing and all of those things, Frank. But right now, when we're talking about the Cowboys, if this goes as badly as I think it can go, I think it's very fair at the end of all of it to look at it and say, man, Jerry really did some things at his end of the time with the Cowboys that we have to consider in context when we talk about how influential he was to the league and the imprint he left on the NFL forever.
Yeah, we're so aware as sports fans now that, yeah, and I feel bad for Dallas fans, keep bringing up the Mavs Luka Doncic trade. When you hear the name Nico Harrison, the first thing you're going to think of in 20 years is that's the guy who traded Luka. Jerry, I'm not saying that Jerry's going to go in that bucket, because Jerry's done a lot of things in the NFL. He has 3 rings, and I mean, his story, like, it's a Netflix documentary at this point, right? Like, he's done a lot more than just one trade. But I do think by the end, like you talk, I think Al Davis is a pretty good comp. Al Davis, one of the great figures in NFL history. But yet, when you say the name Al Davis, you think of that, but you also think about, oh man, all those draft picks at the end, Jamarcus Russell and Darius Hayward-Bay, and just a ridiculous moves the Raiders were making at the end. And you do have to wonder, is that where we're going with Jerry here? Are we going to be like, man, I got to trade away Micah Parsons and the Packers won 3 Super Bowls? That's not out of the question, by the way. We'll talk about the Packers. Don't worry, Packers fans. We're getting there. But yes, this is one of those moves. This is why I think this is one of the biggest trades in NFL history, because this is one of those trades we're going to be talking about in 20 years. We're going to remember where we were when this trade was made. Like that's how big this trade is. I can't tell you where I was when the Jay Cutler trade was made, but I'll be able to tell you where I was when I heard about this one. And you're right. How can it not impact his legacy a little bit? Again, who knows? Maybe the Cowboys turn these 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark into a Super Bowl. We don't know how it's going to turn out. But if it turns out we think it's my turnout, how does this not impact his legacy? How do you not, when you think about Jerry Jones and everything he's done in the NFL, also think of him as the guy who traded Micah Parsons away when he was 26 years old?
Packers fans of a certain age remember where they were when Reggie White made history and signed with Green Bay. They now also will remember where they were the day that Micah Parsons was traded to the Packers. What